cheaters start off as unhappy individuals. When they betray their partner's trust, their path to failure is set. Why is it so hard for people to communicate their feelings openly? My wife acted selfishly, ending our marriage abruptly. Her future seems uncertain. With a condescending demeanor, I seized the opportunity to finally voice my bottled-up emotions. After nearly 3 months, I found myself back in our former home, surrounded by familiar surroundings. As I did a final check, ensuring nothing was left behind, she couldn't resist remarking, "Jim, you know you're always welcome here." I sighed, met her gaze, and calmly responded, "There are a couple of points I need to address. First, filing a restraining order suggests otherwise. And second, this visit marks the end. This place, once filled with cherished memories, now feels tainted." "No, Peggy, I won't be coming back." She recoiled slightly, saying, "I understand it sounds harsh. We had hoped to handle this differently, but my lawyer advised it was necessary for everyone's safety and to resolve things calmly before your return. It was for your protection as much as ours. Thank you for underestimating me so much, assuming I couldn't control myself. You know as well as I do that I've never been violent towards you or the kids, barely even raised my voice. And if it was about me dealing with dickwad, you didn't need to worry. If I ever seek retribution, it won't be in front of the kids. You should know me better than that. But I guess that's what happens when you get involved with someone like him and hire a lawyer who seems to hate men." Just then, Dickwad appeared. He walked over to my soon-to-be ex-wife and put his arm possessively around her shoulder. He looked somewhat embarrassed, but his words contradicted his body language. "Jim, I respect you. I know you were the best among us when we served together, but it's been over 10 years since then. I was genuinely concerned you might come at me with anger when all this started, and I didn't want any harm to come to you. I've caused you enough pain, and that's the one part of this whole situation that I regret." I found myself recalling the events of 3 months ago. When I returned home from work, waiting for me on the front porch were Peggy, Dickwad, a process server, and what seemed like hired muscle. I was handed divorce papers, a restraining order, and a suitcase containing a week's worth of clothes. They also informed me that the generous couple had prepaid a week for me at the local Holiday Inn, but thereafter I was on my own. Peggy, with a pained expression, apologized, saying, "I'm sorry, Jim. I never planned for this to happen. Barry and I don't know. We've always gotten along, and while he's been here since he retired, we just got, closer. And I'm so sorry. I know this is a shock and it's going to be painful, but we want to make it as easy as we can for you." Without a word, I grabbed the suitcase, turned, and headed back to my truck. Though I was seething inside, I refused to show it, especially in front of them. I certainly didn't want to do anything that might harm my relationship with my kids. I got into the truck and drove off in the opposite direction of the Holiday Inn. I had no intention of accepting their offer. Perhaps it was petty, but that's where I stood. I secured alternative accommodations for myself and ignored all the apologetic and desperate texts over the next week. Consulting a lawyer revealed I was in a tough spot. Since my partner was a stay-at-home mom and I traveled frequently, she was likely to receive primary custody with generous visitation rights, as she had requested in the petition. She would keep the house, though they'd need to buy out my share. I wondered how they'd manage that, given her lack of income and his recent transition from the Army to civilian work. I assumed they'd found a mortgage company willing to assist a veteran. Everything else proceeded smoothly, except for her pursuit of my pension, which promised to be contentious. After sorting out legal matters, I took some time off, during which I alternated between drowning my sorrows and facing reality. Despite my seething anger, I restrained myself, knowing that any misstep could affect my access to the kids eventually. I found a cozy 3-bedroom house in their school district and moved in. As agreed, I now have access to the former family home to collect my belongings. Once they realized I wasn't going to cause a scene, Peggy informed the court-appointed supervisor that he could leave, but I insisted he stay. I wanted everything documented to protect myself later. I smiled bitterly when I inquired about my kids and was informed that Peggy and Barry decided it was best for them to spend the day with her parents, citing that it might be too difficult for me. Well, I retorted, what's been difficult for me hasn't seemed to concern anyone lately, has it? Jim, she began, I know I've hurt you deeply and I'm sincerely sorry. It was never our intention. I understand we have no right to ask, but would you be willing to sit with us so we can explain? You haven't given us a chance since all of this happened, and I believe if you allow us to talk to you, it will make more sense and help you come to terms with what has transpired. Yeah, pal, Dickwad chimed in. I know things seem bleak right now, but I truly believe we can find a way to navigate through this. I'm confident our friendship and your love for Peggy and the kids are strong enough for us to work things out. First off, I'm not your pal anymore. It turns out I never was. And second, there's no path through this. You're dead to me. I'll have to endure dealing with my soon-to-be ex-wife who cheated on me regarding my kids, but let me be clear, you and I are finished. Now, if the two of you feel the need to justify how all of this just happened, I'll listen for a moment. It should be amusing to see how you can spin this. Hey, I understand you're hurting, but I won't tolerate you disrespecting the woman I love. You know it wouldn't end well if we got into a confrontation. I glanced at Dickwad and smirked. Oh, we'll have a reckoning, just not here and not now. But rest assured, I won't ambush you like you did to me, your so-called brother-in-arms. So if I choose to label my soon-to-be ex-wife as a cheater, I will, because that's exactly what she is. Dickwad sprang out of his chair, fury in his eyes matching his intensity. I challenged, come on, give me a reason. Take your shot, you coward. Peggy intervened, grabbing Dickwad's arm. Barry, stop it. This won't solve anything. We did this to him. Now sit down. After Dickwad complied, I briefly considered another jab about him being controlled by his partner but decided against it. This was war, and our current skirmish was insignificant in the grand scheme. Once tensions eased and I declined the offered coffee, I urged, let me deal with your mess so I can leave. Jim, I want you to know that this isn't a reflection of your character as a man, husband, or father. I've always respected and loved you. Until 5 months ago, I was completely content in our marriage and faithful to you. I still love and respect you. Well, you have a peculiar way of showing it, I retorted. Jim, please. I know I've hurt you. You have every right to be angry, but being disrespectful won't solve anything. I've been torn since this all began. I knew I would hurt you, but I had to follow my heart. I couldn't settle for less than my perfect match. Barry is my soulmate, completing me. You wouldn't want to deny me that, would you? You have to acknowledge that until now, I've been a good wife and mother. I glanced at Dickwad, who was struggling to conceal his smug expression. How badly I wished to sock that face into next week. Another time, perhaps. But first things first, it was time to knock Miss High and Mighty down a few pegs. I'll give you this, Peggy, for someone who's cheated more than once, you weren't half bad. And you do a decent job as a mother too, I'll concede that. Now it was her turn to rise from her seat. How dare you? I never cheated on you until Barry came to live with us. Your accusation is a complete fabrication. I understand you're upset, but you will retract that statement immediately. Sit down, now. I'm sick and tired of your holier-than-thou attitude. It's high time you both learn some humility. Barry, let's just humor him. We've tried to be kind and understanding, but it seems he needs to vent his anger on someone. Better us than the kids. They both gave me these smug, self-satisfied looks, and Peggy exclaimed, "Well, let's just finish this." "So, dickwad, you think you're her soulmate, huh?" "Yeah, more than you could ever be." "Maybe so, but until I welcomed you into my home and offered you a place to stay until you got on your feet, everything was fine. I'll never forgive myself for letting an immoral predator into my home, knowing my wife was a cheater. That, and only that, was my mistake, trusting people I knew I shouldn't have. I won't make that mistake again. Jim, you keep accusing me of cheating on you, but you have no evidence because you know it's not true. I demand that you take it back." "Oh, I'll get to that. But first, dickwad, let's revisit the soulmate thing. Remember what she said? Soulmates, halves of each other, feeling complete with you? Okay, she has a way of making you feel that way, no doubt. But hold on a second." I pulled out my phone, tapped, and swiped until I found what I was looking for, then handed it to him saying, "Hit play, dickwad." After shooting him another fierce glare, he pressed the button. The video dated back about 16 years, coincidentally our wedding day. I had it cued to a specific moment. I listened as they watched. "Jim, my love, I've waited my whole life for you. The moment I met you, I knew I'd found my soulmate. You are the other half of me. You complete me." I let that sink in for a moment, then quipped, "Call me crazy, but if I'm her other half and you're her other half, doesn't that make her like 1.5 people? I mean, she's put on a few pounds since we got married, but not that much." I could see from Dickwad's expression that he hadn't expected that remark. Peggy went into damage control mode saying, "Barry, don't dwell on it. Everyone is entitled to make mistakes. Jim was mine until you came along." With that, she linked her arm with his, leaned in, kissed his cheek, and shot me a smug grin. But I could tell I had struck a nerve with dickwad. I grinned and remarked, "Ah, my charming liar. But I wasn't your first mistake, was I?" She looked completely puzzled and retorted, "I have no idea what you're talking about, Jim, and stop calling me a liar." "Okay, Jim, stop calling Barry that. Behave according to your age, okay? Remember where I met your other half? On Paros during our vacation." "So what?" "That's right. We were on vacation and booked the most budget flight to Paros. When we were sitting in the Mad Hatter bar, two attractive ladies, unmistakably American, entered the bar. Peggy and her fellow nurse were vacationing in Rhodes in search of Greek romance for a week. As a result, Peggy fell in love with an American guy. To be honest, I dreamed of a Greek romance for a week, but this ardent American won my heart. The fact that she lived only an hour away from me seemed like fate to me. And so it was, wasn't it, my dear cheater? Stop it, please." I waved away her protest. So, skipping ahead a few months, I returned home from duty. She wrapped up her contract, and I eagerly awaited the arrival of my beloved at the airport. We were poised to move in together and embark on our new life. Having left military service for civilian life, I was prepared. But here's the kicker, Peggy didn't disembark the plane. An hour later, she called explaining a delay of a couple of days due to unforeseen circumstances, assuring me of her imminent arrival. Love clouded my judgment. I didn't probe, just returned home to wait. Peggy interjected once more, claiming there was no need for questioning. Ignoring her again, I continued, "Then came our wedding day. You were there, Peggy. But before we proceed, let's revisit our wedding video. Look at my expression as she professes her undying love. Does that appear as the face of certainty?" Glancing at both, I noticed Peggy's puzzled expression. "I never noticed that, Jim. Were you having doubts on our wedding day until 10 minutes before the ceremony?" I was steadfast. "You don't know how close I was to leaving." "But why?" "We loved each other. We were committed. We were starting our life together. What made you hesitate? Let me ask you, why do you think I hesitated? What reason would I have to doubt your love and loyalty, Peggy? I can't fathom why I'd question it on our wedding day. I was wholly devoted to you. I let out a sigh. All right, don't act like I didn't give you a chance to be honest. So, I'm outside the church with my brother just before you showed up, and this stranger walks up to me asking if I'm Jim. When I confirm, he congratulates me on marrying you. I inquire if we've met before, but he says no, though he knows you. When I ask for his name, he introduces himself as Dave Rebstock. As I recount this, I glance at Peggy and see her eyes widen as she mutters. I turn to Dickwad and continue. So my newfound friend Dave proceeds to tell me that until a few months back, he and his fiancée were busy planning their wedding. And guess who his fiancée was? In almost a whisper, he replies, Peggy. Bingo! And care to guess if they were still engaged when Peggy and I got together? Let me save you the effort. Yeah, they were. And want to guess if the cheating ever thought to tell me about it? Let me save you some more trouble. No, she didn't. And guess where she was when she didn't show up for Dave? She was back home kicking Dave to the curb. I shoot Peggy a piercing look. So when you claim you've never cheated on me in front of Dickwad here, I'm inclined to believe you. But if you weren't so self-righteous, you'd have realized I never accused you of cheating on me. I did call you a cheater, which, by the way, you absolutely are. So don't you dare give me that holier-than-thou smug look again because you are a serial cheater. I glanced at the stunned pair. Their mouths were moving so much I felt like I'd snagged them in a fishing competition and reeled them onto my boat. I decided to confront the cheating before dealing with the dickwad. Reaching into my jacket pocket, I handed Dickwad 3 neatly folded sheets of paper. So, Dickwad, what I've just given you is what my new buddy Dave handed me after our chat. Turns out they were the wedding vows he wrote for your supposed soulmate here when he was meant to marry her. He wished me well, believing I had no prior knowledge of him. He was a decent guy, good-looking, fit, and solid. Under different circumstances, we might have been pals, but not now. Indulge me and read aloud the highlighted part. Peggy objected weakly. Barry, you don't have to read it. I know what it says. With contained anger, I urged, just read it. David, my love, I've waited my whole life for you. The moment I met you, I knew I'd found my soulmate. You are the other half of me. You complete me. I couldn't resist. Jesus, Peggy, it must be pretty crowded in there. Her response was chilly, but I wasn't letting her off easily. You sit there acting all high and mighty, telling me you can't deny your feelings, that you found your so-called soulmate, and I just need to understand. Well, screw that. You're nothing but a selfish, entitled cheater. By the time I finished expressing my grievances, I was practically yelling. The intensity of my emotions left her astonished. I rarely raised my voice, preferring a calm yet assertive approach to communicate with her and our children. I've always avoided losing my temper, considering it a sign of weakness, but if there ever was a situation deserving of anger, it was this. She attempted to defend herself, but it was feeble. If I'm so terrible, so undeserving of the wonderful guy, why did you marry me? Why didn't you just leave? I sighed. It's simple. Ask the jerk sitting next to you or ask your other victim, Dave. You're skilled, very skilled. You made each of us believe we were the one. I believed it, Dave believed it, and I'm sure Mr. Jerk believes it too. But history has proven otherwise, hasn't it? I glanced at him, seeing a mix of disappointment and defeat. I thought to myself, you have no clue, I'm just beginning with you, disloyal fool. He, however, chose to prioritize pride over humility and draped an arm around her, jutting his chin out defiantly as he declared, Don't worry, babe. You simply hadn't encountered me yet, the perfect match for you. I've always known you were the one for me, and I'm going to spend the rest of our lives proving that to you. With a self-satisfied smirk, he shot me a glare. Oh, this was going to be entertaining. So, dickwad, you believe cheating is the one, huh? Absolutely, and if you keep calling her that, we're going to have a problem. I brushed off his immature threat. Well, cheating does, dickwad, make you feel like the one? She sighed, clearly bothered by the name-calling, as if I cared. Yes, Jimmy does. You did too. I've told you that countless times, but Barry makes me feel incredibly fulfilled, like I'm his entire world. So yes, I do believe I'm the one for him. Dickwad had regained some of his confidence by now and turned to me, saying, I'm sorry, buddy, but when you find your soulmate, you can't ignore what the universe is telling you. I understand it's tough being replaced like this, but once you see how happy we are, you'll come to terms with it. I glanced up at the ceiling as if trying to recall something. The one, the one. Where have I heard that before? Hang on, I think I remember. I grabbed my phone and pretended to rummage through it until I finally found what I was looking for. Aha, here it is. This is a message from you yourself, written just a year and a half ago. Let me read it for both of you. Well, Jimmy, kid, tear up my bachelor card. I found the one. Amy is incredible. We're head over heels in love with each other. She's smart, understands me, great in bed, and has the most delicate skin. She works at the base and is incredibly attractive. I feel like the happiest man in the world. We've been together for about 3 months, and I'm already thinking about proposing to her. I hope you and the guys will be ready for the bachelor party in a few months because I'm going to need it. So, how many of those are you supposed to have? Doesn't the one mean only one person? Considering the 3 other mistresses that this lying liar has and the 2 ones that you had, that huge bed that I spent last year on will be pretty cramped. The old jerk looked like he had just tasted vinegar. He looked at Peggy and said, Darling, I was a fool. I was overcome by loneliness, and I panicked. It didn't last long after that letter, and she was in the past. You know that you are the one for me. So, Amy wasn't the one, and Peggy was the one, yes? Like Peggy, everyone has the right to rush things. I grinned, glanced at my phone, and began scrolling. So let me confirm, I said. Cindy at Fort Hood isn't the one, and hold on, scrolling, here it is, Donna at Fort Sill isn't the one either. I shook my head. You know, dickwad, I'm confused. I have emails from you claiming all 3 of these women were the one. I'm not a math genius, but it seems you now have 4 the ones. I continued, listen, I couldn't care less about either of you. You, dickwad, are dead to me, as I've said before. You, my cheating wife, I'm stuck dealing with because of our kids, probably forever. But my point is, both of you sit here acting all innocent, saying your affair was some uncontrollable force, something bigger than both of you. But in reality, you're just unfaithful, and frankly, you deserve the pain you're going to cause each other. I've even started a bet with the guys from our unit, guessing which one of you will cheat first and how long your relationship will last before it all goes up in flames. This infuriated my soon-to-be ex-wife. How dare you? How dare you try to turn our friends against us? They're just as much Barry's and my friends as they are yours. Just because your ego is bruised and you can't grasp what real love is doesn't give you the right to drag our friends into this mess. She turned to Dickwad and reassured him, don't worry, baby. Once they see how happy we are at the wedding, everything will be fine. Mr. Bitter over there will just have to deal with it on his own. Dickwad made a feeble attempt at appearing conciliatory, though it was evident he aimed to aggravate the situation further. Hey, Jim, I understand that the wedding will mark the first gathering of the entire crew without you. Peggy and I considered inviting you to the wedding so you could catch up with everyone and see the kids, but we thought it might be too painful for you. perhaps some of the gang could swing by to visit you the next day. They might be a bit worse for wear, though. You know how they like to celebrate. His smug grin only fueled my determination to wipe it off. I grabbed my phone and sent a simple text in our group chat. Feel free. Oh, don't worry about me. I've got plans that'll keep me plenty occupied that day. In moments, both of their phones began buzzing with incoming messages. If the phones had been on the table, I swear, they would have spun with the flood of notifications. Well, would you look at that, speak of the devil. Here comes a slew of responses from the gang regarding the wedding, Jim exclaimed excitedly as he promptly opened the first one. His expression turned sour as he opened the second and third. Peggy, noticing his dismay, grabbed her phone and began scanning the replies. They all echoed the same sentiment. She shot me a piercing look that could have cut through steel. If looks could kill, well, let's just say I wouldn't be recounting this tale. What on earth did you do? What do you mean, cheating? You damn well know what I mean. What did you say to our friends? No one is showing up. Every response is identical. She thrust the phone toward me. While I didn't know the exact wording, I had a pretty good idea of the gist. I couldn't help but burst into laughter when I read it. Apologies, won't be able to make it. We've got a barbecue at Jim's that day. P.S. Don't s*** where you eat. Dickwad looked devastated. I can't believe my buddies would bail on me like this. They must have been coerced into it. What did you say to them? Well, let's get one thing straight. I couldn't care less if you believe me, but I had absolutely nothing to do with this. If they wanted to attend, that was their choice. I wouldn't have been upset or disappointed. I wouldn't have seen it as the group picking you two backstabbing jerks over me. In fact, I've hardly discussed this with anyone in the group, I was that embarrassed. But as soon as your invites went out, Dennis called asking about the housewarming. I told him I hadn't made any plans yet, and he informed me that the group had decided it would coincide with your wedding. I tried to tell him they didn't have to do that, it wasn't fair to make them choose, and I was fine with them attending your wedding. But they insisted. Again, I couldn't care less if you believe me, but that's exactly what happened. So, I suppose your affair will be a bit more intimate than anticipated. At least it'll save you some money on the catering. They appeared as though they had just lost their closest companion, and in some respects, they had. I hadn't actively sabotaged their wedding day. Truthfully, I was indifferent. But the rest of our group strongly disapproved of their actions and wanted no part in the wedding. They reached out to me, expressing their intent to gather from far and wide to celebrate my new home and offer support in the best way they knew how. Frankly, I anticipated sinking into self-pity that day, so having the gang with me and notably absent from their wedding would be a balm for my wounded spirit. Dickwad seems fantastic, just fantastic. I've been there for every damn one of their weddings, and when it's my turn, they abandon me. The cheating attempted to calm him. Honey, don't stress. We knew there might be uncomfortable moments. I can sympathize with their perspective. While today is special for us, it's undoubtedly tough for Jim, and we essentially forced them to choose sides. I find it commendable that they prioritize the person in need of support. You'll see, at the next gathering, things will almost return to normal. Jim will have to accept our presence and cope as best he can. I struggled to suppress a smirk as I replied, well, I'll have to find a way to manage. Luckily, the next party falls on my weekend, so the kids and I will enjoy a fun road trip, which should keep my spirits up. How do you know when that is? I haven't seen an invitation. I've been expecting it. Jerry and always host it sometime in July. Yeah, it's the weekend after the holiday weekend. I marked it on the calendar, so that's how I know it's my weekend with the kids. Invitations were sent out 3 weeks ago. As they both scrolled through their phones, the realization slowly sank in. Dickwad looked as though he'd been punched in the gut, which metaphorically, he had been. I can't believe my guys turned their backs on me. We've been like brothers for almost 20 years. He looked on the verge of tears, and Peggy offered a sympathetic arm around his shoulder, shooting me a glare. You may not have anything to do with this, but you can damn well fix it, and I expect you to. Barry and I have just as much right to be there as you do. Once again, I burst out laughing, just. When I think you can't get any more delusional or self-absorbed, you prove me wrong. I have neither the time nor the inclination to advocate on your behalf. Holy, you two are completely insane. You have no idea the chaos your supposed love affair has caused and how many people it has affected. The group from the unit is one thing, but damn it, Peggy, your family is devastated. My family is devastated. And all of that is nothing compared to the impact on the kids. Her head jerked. Oh no, you won't. You can't manipulate my children against me. I'm an exceptional mother and I've done extensive research. I understand that although divorce is challenging for children, it no longer dictates their lives. In many cases, children from divorced families actually become happier and more successful once the turbulence of divorce subsides. So don't you dare suggest that prioritizing my own happiness is detrimental to my children, because nothing matters more to me than their well-being. Well, I retorted, we both know that's not true, don't we? If it were, you wouldn't have slept with that sorry excuse for a man sitting next to you. Jim, she exclaimed, I just explained to you that children from divorced families often thrive once the divorce is finalized. I've done my research. I simply shook my head. You ignorant fool. Yes, children from fractured families often recover and feel more secure when their battling parents finally part ways. But that's not what Emma and Liam are going through, is it? We had a happy and nurturing home filled with support, laughter, and built on a strong foundation. Now they're uncertain about the future. If you had only sat down and truly spoken to them instead of sugarcoating everything, you'd realize that for the first time, they're scared and unsure about what's to come. Peggy really took this to heart. Despite any flaws that had surfaced in the past 3 months, previously, I couldn't have asked for a better mother figure. She balanced being a parent and a friend flawlessly, knowing exactly when to switch roles. I didn't recognize this new version of her, but this accusation deeply resonated with her true identity, leaving her visibly shaken. Despite her reaction, I continued, I'm warning you. Every A that slips to AB, it's because you've betrayed us. Every time one of them retreats to their room in silence, it's because you've betrayed us. Every smirk or snicker they endure at school, it's because you've betrayed us. You've instilled in my son the fear that no matter how devoted a husband, father, or man he becomes, if his partner desires more, everything he's built can crumble beneath him. He's confessed to me that he can't imagine ever marrying. As I spoke, Peggy's expression turned to one of horror. Oh please, no, he mustn't believe that. I shot her a scornful look. Give me one good reason why he shouldn't. The most significant female role model in his life has just discarded the most crucial male figure in his life. For what? Some unfamiliar guy? Get a grip. What other conclusion is he supposed to draw? And what lesson have you imparted to Emma? You may fool yourself into thinking you've taught her to settle for nothing less than what she desires, but what you've truly demonstrated is that it's acceptable to dismantle a perfectly contented home for something shiny and new. Bravo, Peggy. You've earned my vote for Mom of the Year. She appeared visibly shaken now, clearly displeased with the reflection I had just held up to her. It was time for Dickwad to step in and attempt to save her, or at least make an effort. Don't pay any attention to him, darling. He's fighting a losing battle. Once Emma and Liam witness how genuinely happy their mother is and how much better our home will be, everything will work out. Jim, I have to admit, I understand you're hurting, and despite your disbelief, I genuinely apologize for that. If there was any way to avoid this situation, we would have taken it. However, you're really surprising me here. I've known you for a long time, and I've never seen this vindictive side of you. Give us some credit. We only have the children's best interests at heart. I'm sure you believe that. I'll never forgive myself for letting a serial homewrecker into my sanctuary. I was torn between my duty to the unit and my duty to my family. I brought you here hoping to have some control and prevent you from ruining lives. My mistake was trusting the one relationship I thought was secure. I warned neighbors about you. I warned the people who got you your job about you. The only person I didn't warn was myself, and my kids will ultimately suffer for my mistake. I'll spend the time until your inevitable breakup protecting them from you two morally bankrupt individuals. My only hope is that one of you cheats before Emma turns 18 in 5 years, because if not, I can almost guarantee Dickwad will come after her when she does. Talk about dropping a bombshell. With a roar, he jumped up from the table, his eyes burning with rage, and rushed at me. I anticipated his move and calmly dodged his attack. After a short struggle, I managed to grab his arm tightly. When we served together, I was responsible for his training, and while I may have taught him everything he knows, I certainly didn't teach him everything I know. He shouted, "You! I'm going to." It's funny how tapping someone's hand can silence a person. "Shut your mouth, or I'll stick it where the sun doesn't shine," I warned. "Jim!" Peggy screamed. "Stop it now. Let him go this minute, I'm serious." I whispered in his ear, "Will you calm down if I let you go? Give me your word, and I'll think about getting rid of the cast on your wedding photos." "Get off me," he yelled. I squeezed him tighter, making him cry out. "Barry, just tell him you'll calm down." "He's not worth it," Peggy pleaded. "I'll back off, just let me go," he said. "Say please." "No way. Now you have to say please." I increased the pressure, perhaps hearing a crunch. To give him his due, he bravely endured the pain, but everyone has their limit. "Let me go, please." With a wicked smile, I released him and pushed him away to avoid any possibility of him attempting to strike me again. It turned out he was more astute than I had initially credited him for. He pivoted around, fixing me with a scorching glare of fury, yet refrained from advancing. Peggy was livid. "Jim, I don't recognize you anymore. This man saved your life, and you saved his. I understand you're angry, but accusing him of such a vile, repulsive act is utterly despicable. How dare you make such accusations? I can't even begin to express how disappointed I am in you." I simply shook my head at her. "You think this is merely my anger speaking? That I'm saying these things just to provoke you? Sit down and shut up." "I refuse. We've tried to empathize with your emotions and give you a chance to vent, but this is completely unacceptable. Suit yourself, but you're going to listen to what I have to say before I leave." I glanced at Dickwad, who continued to glare at me intensely while he shook his arm to regain feeling. "Hey Dickwad, can you assist me? I'm trying to understand 3 expressions: bagging a brace, scoring a hat trick, and hitting for the cycle." His eyes widened, but he attempted to delay the inevitable confrontation. I honestly have no clue what you're talking about. Probably more nonsense like you've been spouting since you arrived." "Seriously? You're sticking with denial? Suit yourself, but don't say I didn't give you a chance to be honest." I glanced at Peggy. "Well, my dear, let me educate you. In most places, bagging a brace means achieving 2 of something, like scoring 2 goals in hockey or catching 2 fish. But in Dickwad's world, it means sleeping with 2 women from the same family." He lingered with his last one just long enough for her daughter to come of age so he could pursue her. I'm not sure if poor Amy knows about him and her daughter, but it wasn't long after that he ended things with her. That can't no, it just can't be true. Barry, tell me it's not true, Peggy implored. Dickwad did his best impression of a fish out of water, his mouth flapping open and closed. Oh, but it gets even better, I continued. In Barry's world, scoring a hat trick doesn't mean what we think, scoring 3 goals, but rather seducing 3 women from the same family. He managed that feat a few times. But don't worry, dear, I've already informed your dad about Dickwad's exploits, and he's assured me he won't let your future husband near your mom. Even I have to admit Donna's still quite the catch for an older woman. Barry seemed like he wanted to disappear into the floor. His face flushed red, and he suddenly found a keen interest in a piece of lint on the ground. And finally, the pinnacle achievement, hitting for the cycle. In baseball parlance, it entails achieving a single, double, triple, and home run in a single game. Hey, old buddy. Why don't you take charge of this one with your fiancée? No cat got your tongue? All right, let me explain. That's the girlfriend, her daughter, her mother, and her sister. To be fair, as far as I know, he's only pulled that off once. Yep, managed to wreck 3 families in one. I must hand it to you, buddy, you're a master homewrecker. Oh, and Peggy, don't fret. Darren is well aware of Dickwad's habit of pursuing his women's sisters. He was, shall we say, less than pleased. Let's just say the annual family trip to the Jersey Shore with Leanne, him, and the kids might not be happening this year. One last thing, I sense you might doubt me, and I suspect old Dickwad here will deny it and try to spin it so he doesn't look like the villain. I held up my phone. If you need evidence, just ask. It's all here. I glanced at the pair. That air of smug, patronizing superiority they had approached me with had vanished completely. If this were a boxing match, it would be the stage in the later rounds where I had landed so many body blows that their defenses were down, they'd spat out their mouthguards, and they were waiting for me to deliver the final blow. But I knew it wasn't necessary. They were going to self-destruct. I was fed up with both of them. I just wanted out. Turning to Dickwad, I stated, I'm finished here. Once I walk out that front door, consider our relationship over. You'll be dead to me. If you happen to see me at the soccer field, stay at the opposite end. If you spot me at the school concert, sit on the opposite side of the auditorium. Only if one of my kids is truly in danger should you ever contact me again. Do you understand? He couldn't even bring himself to meet my gaze. I looked at the deceitful woman. I owe you an apology. I regret not shielding you better from that despicable predator. Despite your current contentment, I can guarantee without a doubt that he will shatter your heart unless you take the initiative to end it first. There was a time when I loved you wholeheartedly, and I firmly believe you were a commendable mother until he led you astray. I allowed him into our safe haven, and for that, I will forever carry shame. You're resilient, you'll bounce back, but he's already begun to undermine your effectiveness as a mother. When you realize this, understand that I've been working tirelessly to mitigate the harm. You've deeply wounded me. I've sacrificed any personal happiness for the next few years until our children are old enough to care for themselves. It's my atonement for losing my way. I loved you for 17 years, but for the past 3 months, I've despised you, and now I feel emptier than empty. I recognize you as the mother of my children, but that's all. Our only connection is through our children. Farewell. I entered the living room and suddenly noticed the court-appointed supervisor was still present. He sat there with a completely astonished expression on his face. I had completely forgotten about his presence. Oh no, I'm terribly sorry. I've completely wasted your time and inadvertently involved you in something I'm sure you didn't want to witness. I should have dismissed you earlier. I have all that's important to me now. Please accept my sincere apologies. Can I compensate you for your time and inconvenience? As we walked toward the door, he appeared utterly stunned. He simply looked at me and said, "Sir, I've been through this before. I've handled many of these situations, and they're usually unpleasant, but I have to admit what I just witnessed was the most remarkable confrontation I've ever seen. It was on another level. I have immense respect for you. You don't owe me anything. Best of luck in your future endeavors." With that, he shook my hand, got into his vehicle, and drove off. I climbed into my truck with the few belongings I truly cared about safely stored in the back and set off down the road toward my new life, my dignity fully intact. A decade later, Peggy and I were spinning on the dance floor at Emma's wedding. "She looks stunning," I exclaimed. "Indeed," Peggy replied. "She seems to have inherited the best features from both of us while managing to avoid the negatives. So, how's it going with Greg? He seems like a good guy. Where did you two meet again? Was it at work?" "Indeed, our paths crossed at work, but there's no need for you to feign interest. I'm well aware I brought this upon myself. As you foresaw, Barry turned out exactly as you described, and regrettably, so did I. I traded reliability for a flashy but perpetually malfunctioning sports car, and it cost me dearly. For what it's worth, we weren't his first victims, and sadly, we won't be his last. He still maintains contact with a few guys from the unit, and from what I hear, he's still up to his old tricks. Some things never change. I know, but it's hard to believe I lost sight of what truly matters. And I appreciate you not rubbing it in my face after things ended with him, or even after Bill or Ethan. You easily could have. I know you probably think I'm still the same, especially given my history with men, but I want to believe deep down I'm just searching for something like what we had. If I don't find it, I move on. I now see what I had, and I'll always regret losing sight of that." I smirked at her. "Oh, come on, don't be so hard on yourself. I'm practically irreplaceable." She chuckled and playfully nudged my arm. "Humility was never your strong suit." I nodded, saying, "Honestly, now that the kids are thriving, I hope you find happiness again. You've done an incredible job with them. I had my doubts, but you've proven me wrong, and I'll always be grateful." Even Lori is impressed. Coming from a fractured family like hers, she really connected with them. Peggy smiled. "You know, I tried so hard not to like Lori, but how could I not? She's wonderful. She makes you happy, and the kids adore her. Thank you for choosing someone like her." As the song finished, I glanced across the dance floor to see the love of my life smiling at me, and I knew I had to be with her right now. "Thanks for the dance, Peggy. I wish you all the happiness, but I should get back to my wife."